I just hated my life. And I lived a life that was for my father. And so it was all about making him proud. And this is not his fault. This is me. But I lived the life that I thought he wanted me to have, which I was. Yeah. He was happier than he could have ever been during that period of my time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, either his dreams die or mine do. And so I had to pick whether I was going to die to him or live for myself. And so that was ultimately, and you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm probably exaggerating. Like, no, my dad and I didn't talk for like years after that. Not really. I mean, like one text every, you know, whatever. But me making the switch to going from like the trodden path of doing the prestigious consulting thing to being a gym owner after going to like a very good school and doing all this stuff, he was not happy about. But that, at least for me, I was free to fail on my own. And, you know, at least in the early days, for the first, let's say 5 years, the biggest motivator was proving him right, that I was going to be a failure doing the new path. And so that was more painful to me than anything that I could go through. And so that was always my reminder. So like, no matter how hard it was, I was like, I'm just not going to let him be right. And so that just like got me through it. And so a lot of people have like these really motivational like speeches of, I just wanted to change the world and I just wanted America to be fit. Like, I didn't want any of that. Like, I just wanted my dad to be wrong. And so, you know, then I, you know, progressed through that. And first it was like, I want to make, you know, more money than my dad. And then it was, or as much money as my dad, then it was make more money than my dad, then it was make more money than my dad's ever made. And then I realized that I was trying to win at a game that was not mine. So I was trying to beat my father at his own game. And then that's when I realized that I was like, is this the game I really want to play? And so kind of shifted gears into like, well, what is the game that I want to play and where do I find meaning? And that kind of went to a different place. And now it kind of is what I say now, which is it's just learning for me. And I think we can create our own meaning around the things that we want. And so that's the most depressed I was when I was 22 and having to quit that job or that life for the new path was by far the hardest decision I made in my life. By far. Like still, number one, hardest decision I've ever made in my life. But after that, it all got easier. It was still incredibly hard, but that to me was like death. Like I actually had to leave my dad, not my dad, I had to leave Baltimore, which is where I was from. And I didn't tell anyone until I was already halfway across the country because I knew that, because I'd already tried to leave and I couldn't do it. And because he'd always talk me out of it. And he had a lot of authority over me at the time because he was the really successful, you know, he was a doctor.
Oh, right,
and
okay.
yeah, so he was a doctor and he was successful and he wielded a lot of authority over me. And a lot of my early days was like trying to make him proud. And I realized that over time, the approval of my father was something that was always going to be out of reach. So it didn't matter where it was, he would always move the goalpost. And that's fine. I mean, hey, I've come a decent way. But I think it was like probably 7 years after I left for the gym, you know, to start the gym. This is like when Gym Launch started really crushing it. And he called me to, you know, give a momentous apology. He never apologized to me in my life. And I remember we were out to dinner and he called me and I was like, this is weird. Like, he doesn't really call me that much. So I took the phone. I was like, hello? He's like, you're going to want to sit down. And I was like, okay. And he said, I'm sorry. And I was like, for what? He was like, you know, everything. I was like, okay. And, you know, rather than having that just be a nice moment, which I probably should have done, I was still very angry. And so I was like, you know, Pops, you know when they have those speeches at those award ceremonies and people get up there and they're like, you know, I just want to thank my mom and my dad for always believing in me. I was like, I'm not going to say that. I was like, because you didn't. I was like, because you only believed in me once it was obvious. Once I'd made more than you've ever made in your entire life. And he was like, well, we'll see how long it lasts. And so, you know, we had a little bit of that kind of competitiveness or whatever. I don't even know what you want to call it. I was disrespecting him is basically what that was. And I shouldn't have done that, but I was younger and I was angrier. But now I think we're on decent terms, and I think he has come to respect me in a real way for, you know, who I am, because the thing that I also said in that conversation, which I probably shouldn't have, was, you approve of me now And I was like, but I stopped caring about what you thought 5 years ago. So your approval doesn't mean anything to me.